Welcome to another episode of Tools, Talents, and Techniques. I'm your host, Dustin Sutton, and today I have the privilege, the honor to introduce to you Mr. Michael Beckerman. He is the CEO of CREtech, which is the premier conference company that's dedicated to technology and sustainability in the built environment. So this conversation talks a lot about not just commercial real estate and sustainability, although we do talk about those topics, but more about Michael and his life and his journey and the things that he sees and what he's doing and what led him to here. Because in the conversation, you'll hear more about him struggling to find his way and find his purpose in his career. Then he had some success, but really it took an epiphany and really working towards certain aspects of his career and his self to be a fully realized professional and human being. So I hope that listeners take even a piece of what I was able to take and gain from this conversation. Here he is, without any further ado, Mr. Michael Beckerman. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, thanks so much for having me. A pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of all the great work that you're doing. So it's a real privilege to be on the podcast with you.
Oh man, the privilege, the honor is mine. And I'm sure that our listeners, anyone who's not familiar with you, will come away from this with a better understanding of who you are and why you do what you do and what makes you special. But before we jump in, could you just introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, great. Thanks. So Michael Beckerman, I'm the CEO of a company called CREtech. Our main business is conferences that are focused on driving technology adoption and sustainability adoption as well into the built environment. So most of my world is commercial real estate. So it's office, multifamily, logistics, retail, self-storage, hospitality, et cetera, et cetera. And since 2017, I've been on this mission to try and galvanize the world's biggest asset class, which you know so well, to try and embrace technology, sustainability, innovation. So we got started, as I said, in 2017. First conference was probably a few dozen people. Now we've built this global audience of a couple 100,000 people, and conferences get a couple thousand people. We do one in New York and one in London. So that's my primary business today, and I'm a almost 40-year veteran of the commercial real estate industry. So it's the only industry that I've ever worked in.
The conference that you throw in New York is unbelievable, and we're going to get more into the details of that. And I want to get to the one over in Europe as well. That's on my list there. But before we talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about the origin story of Michael Beckerman. So where are you originally from? Like, where did you get started in your life journey?
Yeah, oh, goodness gracious.
It's a big question.
I hope my kids don't listen to this because they might find out some things about their dad that's not so impressive.
Hey, you don't have to go. You don't have to go that deep. You talk about where you want to go.
Well, meaning, I grew up in New Jersey in Essex County in a town called Livingston, and I was never somebody that was going to embrace and embark on a traditional career journey. I was a failed college student, and so did a little bit of time in college. Sounds like prison the way I describe it. But for me, and just sort of embarked on an entrepreneurial journey that I've been on for a very, very long time. I got started in my very early 20s. And, I'm just one of these guys that never really had a grand plan, Dustin. I just sort of show up every day and see what the universe brings to me, and the mistakes that I make, I try and not repeat them as often as I usually do. And, just be opportunistic in, where I can kind of find a place to have an impact and feel fulfilled in my own sort of career journey. So pretty non-traditional path, not one I'd highly recommend for anyone else, because oftentimes it's a harder journey. But it's because it's so non-traditional, but it's my authentic journey. So yeah, I've been working on my own, never worked for anybody since, my early 20s. And as I said, always in this one industry, commercial real estate, which I kind of stepped into, fell into, but fell in love with.
When you were the college and you were trying to find your way, or maybe you weren't, maybe you're just wandering aimlessly.
I was wandering aimlessly through the desert, if you could call Jersey a desert. But yeah, I didn't really have much of a career path. I didn't really, as a young man, didn't have much motivation, or I didn't have much work ethic. So I was that kid that, kind of always got sort of left behind in a way. I just didn't fit into the educational system. I wasn't a good student. I wasn't very driven. And, life and circumstances are my greatest teachers. So that's where I've learned. It's just, having to survive, having to, make a living for myself, then for my family, and being fulfilled along the way. So that's kind of been my career path.
When you mentioned, so did you leave college? Did you drop out or
Yeah,
of college?
I dropped out and started working very, very early. My parents had a very small business, and I wasn't doing well in college. I just didn't stick, and
Hmm.
I just started their business was floundering, and I just went to go support them and help them. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and then, I had a couple other small part-time jobs at the same time, and then I kind of, you know, found some things that I really was passionate about and I really enjoyed. And when I stop enjoying them, I go look for the next blank canvas, and that's kind of how I've built my own career. It's worked for me. Um, yeah.
Man, this sounds eerily similar to my career experience.
Well,
Uh,
I'm not the only one that's sort of, faking it till I make it. I'm not saying you, but just
yeah,
you just kind of. I found if you don't sit too much in the past and you don't think too much about the future and you just be very present, you could see like a lot of opportunities that just kind of unfold. And if you put yourself out there, you talk to a lot of people and you listen more than you talk, you can find some really interesting, cool things to do with your career.
well, from my experience, it's very frustrating when you don't fit in a lot of different places. And for me, for my career, I've tried a lot of different things, and it's like, well, I do it for a while, and then it's like, nah, this isn't it. And then I try something else, like, this isn't it. But to your point, eventually you start to realize what doesn't work for you, what does, and you kind of mold your way along the journey.
I think that's great, Justin. Thanks, Justin. I think what's so interesting for me is that it's the realization, and it might take 30 years. Hopefully, it doesn't for most people. It might take 40 years, but eventually, you do sort of find the path. You know, you do sort of arrive at certain seminal moments where you realize, oh, that's where I'm supposed to go. And, it's taken me a very, very long time, but I'm at a place right now where I know it's the most passionate, the most committed, determined, uh, focused I've ever been in my career. And I look at like all these different roads that I've traveled down: real estate, tech, climate. They've all converged now. And now I see, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. All those struggles, hardships, the challenges of building a business from nothing, and as I said, all the mistakes that I've made. Um, you get to the point where like, oh, it all makes sense now. It didn't
Hmm.
way, you know, while you're going through it and you're on the bottom again, you're like, what the f? But eventually, if you just stay with it, that sense of optimism and wonder, which I think is, again, it's not what they teach you in school, but it's how I've learned. I know how you've learned. If you just kind of don't give up on that, and you show up every day, you'll find it. And that's where I'm at now at this ripe old age of 59. I kind of found it. And I'm very, very purposeful and driven now. And it's all about, for me, the decarbonization of the built environment. And, now I'm like, okay, it's go time. So that's kind of where I've landed today.
One of the things that sense of awe, that sense of wonder and curiosity that I agree with you 100% that that's key to moving forward, because if you're always looking, well, how can this be done? Why is it done like this? Can we do this better? Or is there something that we could do or bring somebody else in here? And I think from what I know of your journey and from my journey specifically, it's all the tools that you learned from those, let's call them failures, even though they're building blocks, you can pull from that bag of tools and say like, oh, I know this person from this, and I'm going to bring them on to help me figure out this, or I'm going to use this technique that I pulled from this industry and do that here. And it all builds towards that. Is fantastic to hear that you feel that you've arrived. There's no better feeling than being in that zone of you're making an impact, you're driven, you're purposeful. So congratulations on that.
Thanks, man. That means a lot coming from you, Dustin. I think the other thing is that, one of the things I've learned, and I do, embrace a lot of spirituality in my own work journey. And I see that, the other thing that I realized along the way, and you're a great example of this as well, is that, I think your personal life and your professional life, if you're truly authentic in who you are, they should be one. Who you are in your personal life is who you should show up for in your professional life. I really, really believe that. So for me, the other thing that I've learned is that the resistance is the teacher. So when I struggle, when I'm really, not making the progress that I really feel we should or I should, I lean in on that stuff and I say, okay, well, this is where I'm going to learn. This is my school. This is my education right here, right now. So just being able to sit with it and listen and observe, and not be scared of the risks and the failures. I think that's another sort of core covenant of my career. I think, I've often, think about there's so many different ways you could go with your career. I know you have a lot of young people in your audience. I mean, it is not for me to judge anybody. Everybody's got their own career path, their own authentic journey. You can either follow a career where you can maximize either productivity and profit and financial gain, and that could be your North Star, and that's great. And you rinse and repeat, and you try and get to that point where you can maximize it, and you keep score that way. Or you're someone like me who, I keep score by, am I fulfilled? I have to make money. My company's got to grow. I got payroll. I got kids. I got college. I got bills to pay. But for me, it's more about, do I feel very passionate about what I'm doing every day? Because it's like it's a 16, 18, sometimes 20-hour day. I better love it. So for me, it was not just about how do I make the most amount of money as fast as I can. No, it was about like building a narrative and a story and a journey that I could be really passionate about. And when I wake up every morning, I love what I do. So, yeah.
When did you begin your spiritual, let's call it awakening? Because I take from what you're saying, like this wasn't always there, or maybe it was in the background, and you've come to a place of acknowledgement.
For sure. Thanks for picking up on that. I think in my 20s and my 30s, probably mid 40s, I was, working to, I'd say, sort of mask some insecurities, mask my fears, mask my stress about, being able to put food on the table and survive, and have a career to be able to build a home and a family, and just feeling, because again, coming from a pretty challenging childhood, just feeling that sense of like, I got to prove something, I got to prove something, I got to be something, and listening to that inner voice. So I think of the bulk of my early career, I definitely was not fulfilled in the work I was doing. But it was a good career, and I built a good company, and we survived, and we got to a nice little scale for what we were doing. But then one day I just woke up and said, this is very unfulfilling. I don't enjoy this. I don't like the work. I don't feel like it's purposeful. I don't love getting up every morning and going and doing it. And at the same time, starting a family. My wife has been practicing Buddhist most of her life, learning about Buddhism, learning about mindfulness, spirituality. I got to that. I just had an epiphany. It was like, well, F it. I don't like this, so I'm going to walk away from it. Not again, like I said, if I got in business school, I would have understood. Okay, well, if you just keep going, you could be on a golf course in 5 years. Just keep going. Just kind of ride that wave. Don't get off. Maximize, squeeze it. But then what? What if the fruit truck came and knocked me over and life was over? And that sucked. That didn't feel good. I was never somebody that was driven by material wealth. So I just had this epiphany, and I had this company that I built, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna figure out a plan to get out. And I figured out a way to get out, and then just really stumbled along the way till I, kind of came to CREtech and said, okay, I like this. This is a new blank canvas. I don't know anything about technology. I love commercial real estate. It's the biggest industry on earth, the one that spends the least on technology and R&D. There's no community here. There's no tech community. I'll go build that. I love networking. I love working with people. I love meeting people. So that's when I stepped into that and started all over again, probably in my late 40s. And I don't regret it for a day.
One of the, I guess, the idiom, the more you give, the more you receive. And I feel like the letting go of where you experience, like everything that you're saying, I jive with 1000%, because when you have that, you said that resistance is the teacher, and you're feeling this way, like, why do I feel this way? And you let go, and look what, I don't want to say the universe gave to you, but look what you've been able to accomplish by letting go of all those feelings. And this, man, this is, that's great. I am,
Well, again, Justin, it's not, the spiritual, the marshmallows, unicorns, rainbows, and all that kind of talk, that people might be rolling their eyes. No, it's just my journey. It's your journey.
Yeah.
I'll tell you though, there's the embracing of a sort of a spiritual professional life. It's been one of the great discoveries of my journey, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to even talk about that. I know that's not what we intended to, but it's great. We're sitting on this topic. There's a great book called Untethered Soul that I read a lot. And a lot of what I read is like you can apply to business about, like you said, Dustin, letting go, trusting the universe. Doesn't mean you don't grind like a son of a bitch, which I did.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I hustle now at 59 like I did when I was 29. Oh my goodness, I do. Doesn't mean I'm still getting my ass kicked, because I am. Doesn't mean I'm not, making mistakes every day and learning from them, because hopefully I still am. But it just means that, like, the deep anxiety of what this will look like in a year or 2 or 5 or 10, I don't worry about that. I just sit in this moment. And that's where the mindfulness comes in, because I just sit here, okay, this day, this moment, this hour, I'm sitting here talking to Dustin Sutton, and we're having a conversation. I'm fully present. That sort of mindfulness has helped me so much in my business career, to shed a lot of the noise that's in my brain, to turn off a lot of the chatter and just lock in. Whether I'm on stage at a conference and giving a speech, or I'm doing this wonderful podcast, or I'm on a team call. I think in the past I was too anxious. I was in too much of a hurry. And I think that's where I made a lot of sloppy mistakes. I wasn't paying attention and I wasn't present. So my mindfulness practice, my spirituality practice, it just helps me lock in at this moment. And it also helps, just trust that as long as I lean in on helping people, everybody that reaches out, I don't care if it's a college kid or it's somebody my age that's looking for a job, or a company that's looking for an intro. You lean in and you help. Number one, don't ask for anything in return. Number two is if you just have that beginner's mindset every day, like, I just learned every call. I'm learning every conversation. I'm just learning every person I meet inspires me.
Mm.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to make sure that I address that you said, well, maybe it's not what people were tuning in for, what they wanted to hear. That's okay. My expectation. So, and even coming into this call, I know, and I want to share your journey and like the steps of your career. But the tools, talents, and techniques are not limited to what people want to hear. I want to know like what tool, if meditation is one of those tools, if it's drinking less caffeine or like whatever it is, or
Drinking more
you
tequila in my case.
yeah, or that, anything. But it's like the way that people get to their journey and where they are, and hopefully it's in a place of fulfillment. It's that's the whole point of these conversations, and that's the learning that I want to do. And maybe somebody that's listening to this that wanted to know about cap rates, is like, oh, everyone keeps talking about meditation. Maybe I should look into that more. Who knows? But that's why I'm so grateful to be able to have these type of
Well, you're
conversations.
doing a good service, man. That's why I love the podcast. I think the common sort of, and again, if you look at business and you say, well, the scorecard doesn't always have to be a dollar sign. It doesn't always have to be who has the most. It's who's the most fulfilled in what they're doing, and that's what I always look at. Who are the people that just are deeply passionate about their work and making an impact, whatever that is. And the rewards come. They do come. It's not to say we're all, some, nonprofit and we shouldn't think about, we live in a capitalist society and I want to win, man. I want to win in everything I do. I want to be the best at whatever I do in the business. But how do you get there? I think a lot of mistakes that I see that people make, and I'm not an expert in this, please trust me. I don't mean to sound so arrogant, is that they just get stuck. And the sense of inertia of not taking risks, you gotta be willing to fail, and I get like so many, and I'm sure you do too, man. Like so many people reach out to me looking for career advice, and then you start to say, well, what about this? And you hear the resistance. Well, I don't know, and not so. And sometimes you just gotta dive in the friggin' pool and not worry about what the temperature is. Just jump in and see what it looks like, because that sort of action will lead to something else. So I try to encourage people not run from risk, not run from failure, and just follow your gut and follow what your passion in life, and you really. It's amazing what you'll discover. Give you an example. I had a climate event recently, and I was thinking about like speakers, right? And my mission about decarbonizing the built environment. 40% of all carbon emissions, as you know, it's the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. The built environment, commercial real estate, of any other industry. And I was like, well, I want to get a speaker that's really going to like be a wow factor. And I was like, just thinking around and like, who do I know? Who don't I know that I could get? And I was like, oh, I read about this guy, Chris Sacca, right? The most successful early stage investor in history. Uber, Twitter, now X, whatever it is, Instagram, many, many, many others. And now he's got a climate fund. It's most of his money, $2 billion under management. And you know what? I was like, F it. I'm gonna reach out to Chris Sacca. What do I got to lose? You know what I got to him, 1 degree of separation from a friend, a colleague, and he said, yeah, I'll do it. Next thing I know, I'm interviewing this guy on stage, and I'm a freaking sponge, and I'm learning so much from this guy. Well, a lot of people would have said, oh, you'll never get him. It's impossible to get him. Why would he even? You could go through that narrative. Why would he come to a CREtech event? We're nothing compared to his massive universe, This is a guy that's buddies with Sam Altman and Elon Musk and all that. What are you doing with Michael Beckerman? I'm a peon. Not really ask, man. And it was unbelievable. The best, probably 45 minutes of learning in my entire career. because
That's cool.
I just asked, you know?
That's special, man. And also what you said about um taking risks. You know, you didn't just get there. Like all the other risks that you've taken in your life and your career led you to that, to be able to that. All the pools that you jump in and temperature, like, it ended up being okay, led you to have the confidence to do that. So yeah, that's so cool.
Well, like I think about, I know you got a large audience in commercial real estate, Dustin. And like, I just think about, you know, real estate professionals. I mean, let's say you're a broker, you've been in the business for 10 years or 40 years. There is so much change in the air in that industry. Um, or you're a developer, or you're in construction, or you're an engineer, or you're an architect, or an appraisal, whatever it is. Like, so here's CREtech, and I'm not selling, man. Like, there's so much happening on the innovation front. Like, step into my world and discover. That's why I appreciate
Mm.
it. Like, discover what some of these tools are. Discover what some of the bigger firms are using and doing. Learn about sustainability and climate, and just broaden your invest in like knowledge of changes that are coming to the industry. I mean, what I have found is those that rinse and repeat eventually get knocked off. Eventually, no matter where you sit, on top, in the middle, on the bottom, if you're somebody that's just going through the motions of the career, eventually you will get left behind. So I'm always like, what's next? Where can I'm always like on this discovery of knowledge, you know? I mean, I don't know anything about technology, Dustin. I don't know anything about sustainability up to a couple of years ago. Nothing. I could barely turn on my phone. My kids are always like rolling their eyes, like, okay, Dad, let me show you how to do this again. you know? And I stepped into that. I had no business being in this business. I don't, I'm the slow learner. I have to read things 10 times till it just makes sense. The vocabulary is different. I mean, everything about AI or ML or ChatGPT, or now on the climate front, understanding, uh, carbon and how it comes together and how it impacts the built environment. It's hard work, but I
Yeah.
feel I'm just more. I'm in a better position to make impact with this sort of new knowledge sets, and that's what I'm encouraging all of your listeners to do: is step into what's unknown. It's a wonderful way to constantly be growing.
One of the things I really want to talk about this and the details of facing resistance in the industry, because historically, real estate and commercial real estate, it's very slow to adapt new technologies and innovations. But before we get there, I want to go back to when you said you first got into the industry. So what was your first introduction into, I know you worked in PR and you worked with a lot of large firms. Like, how did you get into the industry in the first place?
Oh, gosh, you're taking me way back. I was I was um, I was looking for a career. Marketing seemed like something I could do. PR was something I liked because I always liked media. I liked content. So I didn't have any schooling in knowing, I didn't take any business classes, right? I barely got through high school. So for me, like, I didn't know. It wasn't like, oh, go into finance, or oh, go into this. It was like, what could I step into where maybe it didn't require a tremendous amount of technical skill set. And so I was like, well, I like to read. I like current events. So I liked PR. I know anything about it. I met somebody who worked for a big PR agency in New York. I asked for a copy of what a press release looked like. I got a copy of it. I think she mailed it to me. I had it in the mail. I was like, okay, so if that's what I have to do, now I gotta go find somebody that wants me to do it for her. So I started just kind of reaching out to various companies where I lived in Jersey. And uh, after a little while, I found a real estate company. And this one company was like, yeah, we'll give you a shot. And I didn't know anything about real estate. And, from there, I was like, oh, this is a pretty cool industry. I kind of like it. It's buildings. It's pretty cool. It's everywhere you look, there's a building. So I started out very small with this little niche of I wanted to be a PR agency for real estate companies. And I got one, and I got two, and I got 10, and I got 50, and I got 100. And I
How
started
long? How long was that span of when you started to when you were at
I
50
think
or
probably 20 years, 25 years. I
okay?
started that. Built a pretty good agency. I don't know how many people, 75, 100 people, something like that, a couple different offices. And it was good. And, I really liked it. But then I started to see things changing. The internet had come along. So, I built this. I sound like such an old fart. But, a lot of it, I was like, what I'd love to do, I'd love to work with, like, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and, like, big media, big business media, and try and pitch them on a story. I loved that. I really loved that, the art of storytelling. I fell in love with it. When that started to go away and the newspapers started to decline and fold and cut and everything went online and it went free, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, it'd be a different world than what I was used to. It's going to be much more social media. And I just found that uninteresting. And that's when I started to think about, okay, I think this ship has sailed for me personally. So then I bought an agency, and eventually, the partners there bought me out, and I was done. But that was my plan, and I was going to go look for the next blank canvas in commercial real estate because I wasn't going to go into healthcare. I didn't know anything. I had to stay in this industry, and I was just kind of stumbled upon tech. Met a few startups, and it was like, oh, technology, the built environment. And you know this, Dustin. So commercial real estate industry is the biggest industry on earth measured by global GDP. It invests the least in R&D. Most industries invest between 5 to 10% in R&D and technology. Commercial real estate's under 1%. Not because it's archaic, not because it's behind, no, because it never had to.
Yeah.
They worked for decades and generations of how they acquire and how they build and how they lease and how they operate and how they sell. It operated on Excel spreadsheets, and the greatest fortunes, probably other than tech, were created in real estate. But again, change is in the air. The way that processes were done, they were obsolete and they were archaic and they were inefficient. And it just, change was in the air. And so I was like, okay, well, there's startup communities here. It's very small. Yeah, I love sort of networking, and I love building communities, and I could see the future is going to be in innovation. It's going to take a hell of a long time. Still got a long ways to go. And so I started organizing conferences, networking. So I would network with startups, the technology companies. Then I would network with venture because venture had to support them. And then I had a big network with landlords, but I had to expand that. I had to go out and find. So you take a big company, whether it's Heinz or whether it's Tishman Speyer or CBRE or JLL or whomever, Avalon Bay. I had to go find their heads of innovation. But that wasn't that hard for me because I was already entrenched and I knew how to get there. So just started connecting the dots and building a community. And so, as I said, started like organizing events in 2017. So the first ones, again, 50 people, got to 100 people. I remember we had a couple hundred people. I thought I was, on the moon. And then I started to understand, okay, this is global now. So I bought a company in London that did what we did. And then, started to focus on 2 conferences, New York, London, scale those. So New York gets 3,000, 3,500 people. London gets about 1,500 people. It's newer. And then realizing again, listening, talking, observing, reading, studying. Okay, well, so the built environment is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, 40% in total, 29 on the operating carbon, the energy that the buildings use, 11 on the construction embodied carbon. This is only a matter of time till the entire world focuses on the built environment and either legislates decarbonization or tenants and residents demand it in the buildings and the spaces they choose, or insurance stops underwriting, banks stop lending. Like, you don't have to be a rocket science to look out and see The climate crisis is the single greatest threat to ever present itself to the industry. But it's also the single greatest opportunity, because forget the moral argument, Dustin. It's a $20 trillion marketplace to decarbonize buildings.
Mm.
That is like, I don't know, 10 internets. It's massive. So forget moral, forget just if you just look at it from a purely capitalistic perspective, this is the big one. And that's where I'm focused now for the next phase of my journey.
Yeah, well, I was taking notes because I was like, there's a few things I want to put a pin in here that you said. First, when you got started, when you were like, I'm going to do this, and that's another example of you taking a risk and you saying, this follow my gut, like this is going to be, and not that many people come, but you were moving in the right direction, and then you learned, and then you do the next one, and it's a little bigger, and then you piece the right people together. That's a testament to everything that you've already said. So you're living that.
I don't know about that, but I just got to put some asterisks in there, though. I mean, there were times where it was never a hockey stick. I mean, I could show you all of the cycles and the moments where whatever I was doing, I went all the way back to the beginning because the market or my mistakes just crashed what I was building. So
Wow.
It's that grit and that fortitude to not give up and abandon the ship, because I've lived through the worst real estate markets you can ever imagine. Ever imagine. I mean, when I was running my PR firm, you're too young and the audience won't remember, but 2008, 2000, mid 90s, there was a crash. 2000, there was a crash. 2008, there was a crash. 2017, there was a crash. I lived through, the COVID, destroying conferences, almost just wiping out my business. So it's not that to say it's all unicorns and cotton candy and rainbows. Like, that's not how it works. Anybody who tells you otherwise is lying, right? And just spinning a tale. I mean, there's a few examples of, like, you'll see where people built stuff in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, boom, and they crushed it. That's not been my journey at all.
Yeah.
I don't mean to imply that at all.
No, I don't. That's not how I took it. However, even saying that, all those crashes that you've been through and all those challenges build your resilience, and you learn lessons through that. And what's important? What are the foundational concepts that remain true throughout these, and how to pivot, how to look at things, how to rebuild through those things. I think those are all really important. I wanted to also make sure I touched on the concept of how big this industry, the commercial real estate industry, is, and the lack of innovation over the years. And one of the things that I've realized, so stick with me here. I'm going to get to the point, but I've realized in my journey in real estate and commercial real estate that, the expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the thing is, even if it is broken, and people are still making a lot of money, it's like, do they fix it? And there's like, well, no, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And, the profits and the gains will be able to sweep away any of these challenges, the inefficiencies that we're doing. And it's really frustrating for somebody like me who's in the industry. And I'm always looking for, how do we do this better? Like, why do we do this? And I ask that question, like, why do we do this that way? Not to just be complaining, because I like building new things. I like that journey and exploring things. So it's really frustrating for me to go through that. When I went to CREtech last year, it was the first time in my professional career that I was around that many entrepreneurs in tech, but commercial real estate specifically. And I could not, my cheeks hurt from smiling so much from being around that type of energy. Because the thing is, it's just that, when you're with people that just do things because that's the way you do it, rinse and repeat, as you say. And then you're around people like, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're doing this, and we're trying to do this and that. Not in all cases. Sometimes it's a solution without a problem. And I'm like, I don't see how that's going to work. But the fact that people have that feeling and put their money where their mouth is to actually build a company, to try to take that shot, it's an empowering feeling to be around that type of energy in the room. And that's why I wanted to share that with you, because one of the things that was my big takeaway from the conference, that you've created a community of, and I know you didn't do it alone. I know you're a humble guy. You know, you're going to say you didn't do it alone, and there's a lot of ups and downs, but the energy was palpable. And the fact that there's that many people that are trying to make the world a better, more efficient, cleaner place, more profitable place, it's something to really hang your hat on. So kudos to you.
Thanks, Dustin. I mean, that's great, man. And it's a great view that you have, and I think that's why I've become such a fan of the work that you're doing, is because you're celebrating the entrepreneur, and you're celebrating and putting a spotlight on the change makers and the troublemakers and the rebel rousers. You know, it's like that Apple commercial, which I loved. You know, here's to the crazy ones, because you've got to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. You have to be crazy. You have to be crazy to be, and I think an entrepreneur is a commercial real estate broker, right? Because they're independent. They eat what they kill. You know, there's a lot of, it's not just like, even though you work for a big corporation, there are so many entrepreneurs within this industry, right? It's not just the tech people. It's anybody who dares to think differently and try new things, embrace new tools. Like a good buddy of mine, Jeremy Neuer, is a top broker at JLL and at CBRE, Cushman. And he's a investment sales broker, and he's been embracing CREtech from the very beginning. And he comes to all the conferences and he discovers the tools. Some of them he says, like you said, that's a nice to have. Well, that's a must have. I'm going to bring that and put that in my toolkit and bring this to my clients and help me with prospecting and help me with closing deals. And those are the people that just give me so much energy, Dustin, like, because it's so hard. It's the easy way, status quo. But that's not me. I want to break shit. I want to challenge the status quo. I want to like get people to think differently, try new things, and take risk, calculate it. You know, I know the other thing about the commercial real estate is that it's risk averse as it relates to technology, but not as it relates to real estate. Probably the riskiest industry on earth.
Yeah.
A lot of the solutions that have been built, you know, they're nice to haves, and the must haves are what is scaling today. And so we're at this really interesting period where I actually believe adoption and interest is greater now on behalf of the real estate industry in tech than it's ever been. Why? Because finally the marketplace is now completely like upside down. Like tenants are questioning office space, long-term leases, how they use space, you know, where they use space. People are moving all over the country now for remote work. There are challenges in construction and supply chain. Capital markets are stressed, occupancy stressed, and they take all this stress now. Well, this is the time to lean in with an innovative mindset to say, well, how can technology solve my labor shortage? How can technology solve my, this crazy inflation on materials to build building? How can technology help me create a healthier, safer building? Because that's what tenants want. And so this is like, again, the market's always going to be bifurcated between nice to have and must have. Must have is going to make an immediate impact. It's going to have ROI, and it's going to deliver some kind of bottom line impact in some capacity. Not to diminish a lot of the cool stuff that's been built, but you're starting to see the market bifurcate because there's demand now. At the show that we just did, we had, 3,500 people. There was more real estate companies than I've ever seen in the history of CREtech. Why? I don't know if it's anything I did, because they're showing up now going, okay, let's see what the hell is under this roof. Like, let's see what's in this tent. And let's see what kind of tools can help us meet the new realities of this incredibly influx, dynamic marketplace. So we're finally at that time where we're getting some serious interest, and adoption is finally starting to scale in the market.
Would you say you're optimistic?
I'm like, I'm optimistic. Oh boy, I don't know how to answer that. I'm optimistic by nature.
Hmm.
I'm just an optimistic person. I'm cautiously optimistic about what I'm doing in our industry because it's hard. It's really hard. If you take a step back and I spend most of my time with the real estate side of the marketplace, trying to understand their needs, their wants, their challenges, their opportunities. The technology sector is asking a lot of the real estate industry. The technology sector is siloed. There's 10,000 solutions. A lot of them don't integrate. A lot of them are single point solutions. And now you're pitching to a real estate company going, use my tool. And the real estate company's going, how big is your company? How stable is your financing? How hard is it going to be for me to adopt and integrate this tool within my organization because I'm understaffed? And by the way, your tool doesn't work in New York as it does in London. So there's a lot of inherent challenges with tech adoption, number one. Number two is it's just slow as a result. So I'm optimistic in the long term, but it's going to take a lot of effort and time to get there. I would say I'm pessimistic. I'm more pessimistic is on the climate front because that we don't have time. I am somebody, I'm going to get on my soapbox that believes in science, that believes the climate crisis is real. Just look out your front door, your window. There's not a place in the world that's not being impacted by climate. And this is the baseline now going forward. So the hot summer, the warm winter, the flood, the fire, the drought. These are things that will be here now forever at this scale. Oh, and now it's only going to escalate. And the built environment has such an opportunity to play such an outsized role in leading the world, but it's understaffed, it's under-resourced in terms of sustainability. And a lot of the challenges now are, well, who's going to pay for it? Because a lot of the tenants regulate a lot of the energy consumption, and it's complicated. But government's coming after the industry. Insurance, as I said, banks are going to stop lending. It's going to be impossible to get insurance in certain parts of the world. So I'm very anxious about the future of the planet, but also the impact it's going to have on this industry. So I'm trying to do all I can to sort of galvanize and lead the charge. And that's where I said where all roads lead and converge, for me at least. So that's where I'm focused every day now.
One of the things that, as far as these tools are concerned and being able to measure the impact or what type of materials and having these things and what they are, one of the real true challenges is the adoption and getting people to understand it, because the science, people have been talking about what's coming for a long time, and people weren't listening to whatever measuring apparatus they used or the medium that they were delivering that information to. And no, that's not important. So I'm really interested, and I wouldn't say like optimistic or pessimistic. I'm interested in seeing really how this unfolds, and who. I think it's going to take the people that adopt some of these technologies and some of these mindsets to be the one, to be the pig with the brick house. That's like, oh yeah, see, like look at what they did, and then hopefully that will cause more people to implement those type of strategies.
Well, you're right. I think so. Where I land on sort of my messaging, Dustin, and I'm not going to be the guy that's going to shame the industry. That feels very judgmental.
Yeah.
I have my own personal viewpoint. They're my personal views. Okay, it's not for me to amplify that. I think that is a bit arrogant. I also think it's foolish because it doesn't. I mean, who am I to tell you what you should and should not do with your real estate, your career in terms of climate? So what I try to do is figure out, well, what's the most compelling argument? Like you said, the most compelling argument is that buildings that are the healthiest, cleanest, safest buildings from an environmental point of view are commanding the highest rents in the marketplace in every city in the world. Fact. They're getting the highest sale prices. Fact. They're the lowest in operating expenses because the energy consumption is managed so efficiently. Fact. They're dealing with a lot of supply chain issues because on the manufacturing and the product side, there's so much that's happening on mass timber, low carbon steel, low carbon concrete, cement. And eventually, like a Tesla, prices will come down and it'll just be higher, more desirable building. I mean, why is Tesla the world's most valuable car company? It's not because it's an EV, because it's a great freaking car. And oh, by the way, it's an EV. Like there's story after story after story that people buy that car. They're not necessarily just looking for an EV. They're looking for a really high performance car. And so the real estate industry is an opportunity to become high performance from a building and an operating point of view. And high performance means high profitability, right? And so I just make the capitalistic pitch about the amount of money that's going to be made and to be gotten. Now, the other side of the equation is think about you got a dirty brown building in some floodplain, in some part of the world that's getting hit hard by fire, drought, rain, or a grid system that's not resilient. Those are stranded assets in a couple of years, if not now. What do you do with these assets? Who buys them? Who's going to retrofit them? They're obsolete. So my message is all about the marketplace. The marketplace for green spaces is going to outperform every other type of space, whether it's retail, self-storage, hotels, office buildings, multifamily, logistics, proven. So that's where I land. It's just going to take time. And that's when I said, you asked about optimistic. That's where I'm just, I'm concerned. Let's leave it with that. That this is it's going to take too long. In Europe, we're already starting to see it. But the U.S., we're lagging. What Saka said, where I landed, Dustin, was, he said, look, I said to him, what are we to make about government's role in all this? He said, listen, forget about it. Don't wait for it. Don't rely on it. It's going to be about jobs. And all the jobs right now are going to red states to build battery plants and this and that. So while a red state might say that, they're climate deniers, and a blue state might say we're climate, advocates, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It's where the jobs are. And the jobs are going to Kentucky, Arizona. That's a great thing. That's a great message. So you want jobs, you want a great career, you want to make a shit ton of money, go after climate, go after climate tech, go after sustainability. That's where I land, Dustin.
One of those things that you mentioned, and especially when you get pulled to either side, let's say like, the red states or blue states, and these people are advocates, these people are deniers, optimistic, pessimistic, and future, past. I think the way the spiritual piece kind of weaves back into this is being able to be present and being in like, what can you do now? And trust the experiences that you had to make your decisions now, and not to live too far in the future about, what will happen, or dwell in the past. We should have did this or that, but make your impact now in whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is. And it's amazing. It's really cool for me to be able to have this conversation with you, who sees a lot of these different aspects, and the commercial real estate, the tech, the sustainability, and you have that mindset of presence and balance. And that's what it's, I'd say it's comforting in a way to know that there's leaders out there such as yourself that take that holistic approach. to your life and your journey.
Thanks, Dustin. It means a lot. I appreciate it. I think, the other thing that I'd say about my approach is like, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Definitely not this room that we're in. I don't have a lot of the answers. I'm as I said, I'm a blank canvas. I'm an infinite learner. I'm constantly just every day. I'm trying to consume something or meet somebody that teaches me something. So on this particular climate journey, and I also with the CREtech journey, which is one and the same. It's the same sort of playbook for me, which is surround yourself with people who are far smarter than you, which is very easy in my case, that are in positions of impact, and lean in on that community and start to organize it, start to bring it together, and just start asking, what could I do to be helpful? What are your objectives? And so, like, I just start, I start with a group of 5 heads of sustainability for the biggest real estate companies in the world. You go meet, you don't have an ask. Just go in. How can I help? Right? You don't have an ask for me. I'm not looking for anything. Give me something that I could do for you today. And when you start with 5, it becomes 50. 50 becomes 500, becomes 5,000, becomes 500,000, becomes 5. Like, that's how I think. It's just you throw the stone in the pond and you just see the ripples. And that's how I build, my ecosystem for impact. Because I'm one guy. I'm not Al Gore. I'm not Chris Sacca. You know, I'm not sitting on top of Blackstone or BlackRock. I don't have the financial tools to be able to just poof, make shit happen. What can I do is I try and build and galvanize communities and people. So that's what I'm doing. So when you say, how can people help? Where do you lean in spiritually? It comes all the way back to that. How can
Where
I'm
would
doing? How can I help?
where would you say, if you can identify like where that mindset came from? Was there a specific time in your career that you realized that the service mindset and like starting with that was there a specific time in your life where you or a person that led you to that?
Well, this does feel like a therapy session, which is great because I don't go to therapy, but I clearly. uh, yeah, I think it comes back to that epiphany when I, started to embrace Buddhism and spirituality and mindfulness because, when I built my company, my agency, my PR firm, I really built it with just one person in mind, which was me. Like, that thing was all created to feed my needs, my personal financial needs, my sense of needing a place to have an identity. That guy, whoever that guy was, I created him. Uh, you know, he was a total fictional character that I created. It wasn't me. It was somebody. I was playing a role. And you start to see after 10 years or so, I started to see some of the fruits of my labor and my sacrifices. And then you get to the point where, like, well, is this all there is? Like, I wasn't motivated by having the biggest house on the block, the fanciest watch, the nicest clothes, cars, suits. I mean, I had some nice stuff, and then I was like, well, it's a kind of a lonely journey as an entrepreneur, and it's a selfish one when you just build castles for yourself, and castles not just in the material sense, but in the in the emotional or the spiritual sense. Like, you're just building a foundation of just this massive ego gratification, and I hated it. I woke up one day, I was just like, this sucks. My friends aren't authentic because they're business friends. My work is not authentic because I don't believe in it. I don't love it. And the money's good, and I'm not shitting on it because you got to make money, and I didn't come from much of anything, so it was important. But I think at that point I was like, well, how can I build a career that serves a greater good? And a greater good, I'm not talking about I'm curing diseases we're solving hunger, a greater good where, you know, thousands of people can come to a place, a community where they can find jobs and they can build something with their dreams and they can get funding for an idea that they had, or a company could discover a tool that will have an impact that they're looking for. I mean, that feels, and I can make money along the way for my employees and my investors. That's a great, that's where I'm at, man. So yeah,
Yeah.
there was that epiphany of living a very selfish life. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it felt very shallow for me and unfulfilling. And
Well,
yeah, that's what I switch.
well, having that feeling and being led to make the change is, I think, crucial for anybody in their journey. And to go back to not judging how people do whatever they do, but to be able to be aware that, maybe this isn't it, and being on a path and saying, maybe I'm just going to stop for a minute, look around, and maybe go a different direction, or at least maybe clean off my glasses, or change the map, look at the map a different way, because something needs to change. And I'm for one thankful that you did, and all the moves that you made, because again, it's pretty cool.
I don't know. Thanks, Des. I'm impressed with you. You're great. And you but I think the last thing for me is just, again, not to be preachy, particularly young people, because I know you have a lot of young listeners, a lot of students, like, you devote 90% of your life to work, which is an American thing mostly, I think, which is crazy when you think about it. And you don't want to be that person that wakes up one day and looks back and go, man, that went fast and I wish I had done things differently. Like, there's no redo in this, right? So for me, it's, if I'm not feeling great about what I'm doing, I'm still going to work the same amount of hours.
Yeah.
I'm still going to grind because that's my nature. I love hard work, but why can't it be fulfilling? If you're stuck in a job and you're going into a building that you don't love, and with a company you don't love, working on something you don't enjoy, why do it? Because what? Society, and this is where I think my non-traditional journey has given me the sort of the freedom and the courage to think this way, Dustin, is like, why do it then? If life can change in a moment, you never know. There's no guarantee you're going to make it till tomorrow. So have the courage to say, this sucks. I hate it. I always wanted to be a freaking yoga teacher. I always wanted to be a skilled tradesman. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always had a dream of doing this. It's not going to be easy, but if you don't want to have regrets on this journey, step out of it. Give yourself the ability to question what you're doing, and just start over every day. That's what I do.
Yeah, man. Hitting home with that one. And I would say to your other point about putting yourself in the company of people that encourage you to do that, and that will push you forward and be there to support you, mentally, spiritually, with advice as a sounding board that wants you to grow, that wants you to evolve. I think that's key.
Well, I think that's a great point. I think one thing, again, not to scare people following this path, it is probably the loneliest journey, because, I could, if I was sitting in an office with 15, 20, 500 people who thought, looked like me, acted like me, went to the same school like me, there's a sense of security in that sort of that monolithic sort of culture that you live in. When you step out, and by the way, most of my friends have big corporate jobs, they work for massive companies, and I'm the outlier, right? In the Red Network, and they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, what? You have to worry about payroll every day? I'm like, yeah. Don't you? No, I work for so and so. We're a $1 trillion company. And so it's a lonely journey, but then what you do is you feed on the build this community of people like you that, you're smiling and you know the journey and you've shared the journey that I've shared. You'll
That's
find your
crazy.
tribe. You find the tribe eventually, but it is like when I go to CREtech and I'm around all those people, man, like whatever I might have been feeling about self-doubt or loneliness on the journey, because I'm out here on an island. When you step into that arena, the man in the arena, and you
Yeah.
go with people who got mud on their face and dirt on their hands, and they got the scars to show it. Like you said, Dustin, there is nothing better in the world. I get goosebumps just thinking about, like, I can't wait to go back into that arena with that
Yeah.
because, that's what makes it great. So it's lonely a lot of times. And then you connect with someone like yourself who's got a big smile. The audience can't see you, and just more passionate, bigger. That's where I come back home. Like the man in the mirror, just like, the man in the arena, rather. The man in the arena. Like I read that every day. That's on my wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it.
Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been so gracious with your time. Thank you again. Kudos. If there's any, I'm going to give more information about you and your company in the show notes. But if there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for everything.
I really enjoyed it, man. You're a good dude, and a big fan of all that you're doing. And listen, you're following your passion. You're changing lives. You're helping people. So anybody that's a friend of yours is a friend of mine. So if there's anybody I can be helpful with in any capacity, whether it's just listening or helping or giving some advice, bring it on, and let's try and change the world, one person at a time.
You got it, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Tools, Talents, and Techniques. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did find value in the episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Also, leave a review and share with your network. We have an amazing lineup in the coming weeks and months, some of the most impressive leaders and some of the heaviest hitters in business, all of whom I consider making a positive impact in the world. So stay tuned for more exciting episodes and special features coming up. We appreciate your ongoing support, and we look forward to welcoming you back next time on Tools, Talents, and Techniques.